Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me tonight for episode 19, season 2 of the Standoff with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Richie, unfortunately, is unable to join us tonight, so I'm running solo in a week full of blowouts and another disappointing Warriors performance. Paul will be helping me out from time to time and giving me his feedback on some of the news. So it'd be great to get his insight. And while we're here live on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show via our podcast on iHeartRadio at our convenience. As always, I'm going to cover everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of our round 16 matches and our picks. Then we'll stop to answer some questions from all of you before previewing round 17 and making our picks, before ending the night with a recap of the Super League. So remember to send comments and questions throughout the show, and we'll answer them in the middle period. And let's just get straight into the top stories of the week. Obviously, the biggest news this week has been the Dragons and their COVID issues. Paul Vaughan hosted a party for 12 of his teammates, despite the COVID restrictions set in place for NRL players. As we mentioned last week, they are on COVID level 4 for the NRL, so that was staying within their own bubble and not going out in the public and the likes of that. But this party kind of threw all of that out the window, and all the players involved have been fined for a combined $350,000, and players are banned for a match each. This ban's to be spread across a minimum of 2 rounds and a maximum of 4 to ensure that they can field a team in the upcoming rounds. Paul Vaughan was suspended for 8 games and fined $50,000. I think it was 56. But he's also had his contract torn up by the Dragons. I don't know if you'll remember, but this isn't the first time he has breached COVID rules. Last year, he broke the rules to go to a cafe. And Paul, I know we just briefly discussed it before we went live on air, but what's your take on our rugby league players getting themselves in the news for all the wrong reasons again?
Party! Let's go. I guess the question is, how many players were? Well, I guess all 13 players would be in action that day, right?
Yeah. So they were all there. There was just a handful that weren't. I believe Cody Ramsey, one of the wingers, he wasn't there, and a handful of others, because obviously they have an extended group that they take away because they're on the Central Coast.
So how big is an extended group? 25,
usually
30 players?
I'd say probably 20.
Okay,
20,
so
21.
Players. So who were the 7 billionaire mates who weren't invited, or did they run really quickly?
Well, that's it. That is
what kind of team morale does that point to when a quarter of your squad aren't invited to the party?
I don't know if it was a case of not being invited or being the smarter ones of the group saying this isn't something we should be doing. But yeah, as you mentioned there was a lot of talk that the players scattered and ran from the police. Jack DeBellin, who has just come back into the NRL after all his off-field dramas, was caught hiding under a bed.
But to be fair to him, right, he'd just been walking his dog and was dropping something off for the boys.
Exactly, yeah.
He wasn't there at the party.
Yeah, and I know the police are investigating more because the players were lying and trying to cover with the police, which has annoyed the police quite a bit, but they're actually investigating deeper because the story that has been told by the Dragons and the players is that the wives and girlfriends came at the end of the party to pick them up, where the police believe that the girlfriends and wives were actually at the party, which breaks the bubble even further.
Hang on, so they're having a barbecue pool party, and all the babes only turn up at the end. Nah.
Exactly. So, the police are still investigating that part. The police and government fined all the players $1,000 each, which is chump change for a lot of them. But yeah, the NRL did stiffer penalties, and Paul Vaughan got his $800,000 a year contract ripped up, and I see we've got Simon here. He said he had 3 strikes already. That's true. He had some phone sexting scandal, which was a strike against him, and then the first COVID breach, and then this one. So the writing was on the wall for him. He really needed to keep his nose in line, and he failed epically here.
Let's be blunt here. He was the most stupid out of the lot. He was hosting the bloody thing.
Yeah.
I think key here for something that obviously I've been joking so far, but key here in this was that the head coach and the head of rugby or director of rugby, or whatever his name is, the 2 head honchos on tour with these guys, went in the changing room, told them all no partying, and 3/4 of the squad ignored them. I mean, seriously, that's gross disciplinary for the whole crowd. I mean, they should all be fired, to be honest, and have all their contracts ripped up. Clearly, the Dragons can't do that, as you say. They couldn't actually finish their season if they did that because they ran out of players. But no, this is the other lot should be lose half their wages for the year or something like that. I mean, they're putting the whole tournament at risk here. This tournament the NRL gets special exemption to be allowed to travel around, and by doing this, as you say, the whole tournament's at risk. It's a disgrace from these guys. And I mean, the Dragons should be just saying, look, okay, how do we replace all these players? Because none of these guys give a flying beep about this club or about the NRL. Simon says here, this is Paul. This is rugby league. Telling them what they can and can't do is as good as challenging. As you see, a challenge for them. Well, look, then that's the NRL and the leagues and all the teams' fault for not raising their players in the right way and allowing them to get away with stuff for years. Really,
I don't like tarring them all with that brush because I think the Warriors have been a key example for the opposite. They've basically been there for 2 years, and we've never heard anything in regards of them breaching a bubble or anything. And I, as a Warriors fan, I feel for them because when you hear stuff like this, with everything they're sacrificing to keep the competition going, and these other teams are taking the piss essentially, it's not a good look. Because last year we spoke about it a lot last season, Paul, where the Broncos, it seemed every second week, were breaking the rules. Like 2 weeks ago, the Bulldogs did the same thing. So you got all these teams seriously putting the season in doubt. But yeah, I was hoping maybe the NRL would deduct some points from the Dragons because that would help the Warriors out a bit. But
I think from the Dragons' point of view here, to be fair to the club, this isn't the club making a mistake. This is their players, right? The club have told them what they can and can't do. Now, whether the club has been too easy on them in the past and they think they can get away with it, then that's the culture that they've grown in their team is their fault. But it is the players here on this one, so it is a big thing for. I don't want to blame the organisation too much, but the players here seriously are out of order. And as you say, it would have been interesting to know. I mean, actually, hat tip to the Dragons. They have taken pretty stiff action against their players here, right?
Yeah.
They've seen what the NRL's done. They've seen what the police have done. They've seen what the NRL have done, and then they've gone and said, right, that's not enough, folks. We're doing more because we don't believe that this should have happened. So, so to be fair to them, at least they have taken stiffer action against their own players, which is good to see. But to have allowed a culture in their organisation to have developed to allow this is clearly wrong. Hopefully, this will put a line under it. And I thought that basically that the NRL had stopped all this by about a year, maybe year and a half ago, putting a line in the sand saying, right, guys, anybody who gets caught in a scandal is out. And other players got out. So I thought the players would have learned, but clearly not.
Yeah, it's always not a good look. It's the local joke that NRL players aren't the brightest, and every it seems like every week there's a new reason proving that right. And it's stuff like this that does kind of sweep all the good things that players and teams have been doing in their communities and what have you under the rug, because every time something good happens, there's 3 bad things. And no, this is what we're starting our news on. And so the bad stuff generally always comes to the top. And yeah, they've just got to, I don't know what they've got to do.
Yeah, signs of the St George Dragons have been played in people for years, or paid by people for years, playing with poker machines. So yeah, clearly not. I don't know the truth behind that piece, but look, hopefully this is a message to the rest of the squad. As you say that, you were talking about their position in the table and perhaps losing points would have been a good one because they are just in the top 8 currently.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, folks, before we get to this stage later and we get to the show. Yeah. So it's that's not. So yeah, they could be heading towards the finals. How much of a loss is it going to be losing about 7 players and 6 players? You assume that they will, or 6 players each. Sorry, for the next 2 rounds. You assume they split evenly. Well, is that enough that will essentially dock them? Or can they survive? Do they have a deep enough squad to survive losing 6 players?
Potentially, there are rumours, which I'm covering a bit later, about them loaning a player from the Warriors, in fact, to cover for the player they just sacked. But they're the team. I hate talking about this team because every time I say they're done, they get a win. But I've been picking them to drop out of the 8 for about the past month, and they manage to. They'll lose a game, then they'll get one in the win to keep them up there. But yeah, eventually, I think this. Even if they spread it over 4 weeks, I think that the chance of them winning all of them isn't likely. So they don't deserve to be in the 8 anyway, in my opinion. And yeah, this boneheaded decision by them as players has me wanting them to drop out as soon as possible. As a selfish Warriors fan who wants to sneak up, of course.
Do you want to have a quick chat about TV money?
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this one enough so far.
Yeah,
I'm not sure there's much more to add. But someone makes a point here that his understanding is the Warriors bring in to the NRL a TV deal worth 17 million from Sky New Zealand, and the Warriors only take 2 million.
Yeah,
and I think to a certain degree, look, you have to share the TV money around evenly, otherwise you can't get even squads from a what do you call it, cap point of view, a salary cap point of view. So yeah, I wouldn't expect the Warriors to take the full 17 million.
No.
So yeah, but it does raise questions of should the NRL put a team in Japan to get a big a few million from a Japanese TV deal. But anyway, yeah, look, the NRL needs or doesn't need, but yeah, the NRL needs the Warriors really, and obviously the Warriors need the NRL, and I think the two of them have been working pretty well together over this COVID period. I mean, there have been a couple of maybe a couple of disagreements occasionally, but on the whole, I think the NRL and the Warriors have had a good relationship.
Yeah, I think so. And the NRL have been helping the Warriors with their essentially living in Australia and all that, and making it a bit easier in what is a very tough situation for the club. I'm still got all my fingers and toes crossed that the August 15th game at Mount Smart will still go ahead. It's looking dicey still with how COVID is in Australia, and if another team decides to do a Dragons party, you could essentially say that game won't be happening, and the fans here need it, and the Warriors need it. The Warriors, they still make money off merchandise and whatnot, but it's a lot easier to get money out of a home Mount Smart crowd than it would be at Central Coast. As great as the Australian Warriors fans have been, there's a lot of them out there that go to all the games they can, but the majority of your money you get from your home fans, and I'm sure the money they would make in that one game, it's not going to offset all the losses they've had to endure the past 2 seasons, but it's definitely going to be a step in the right direction. And the last thing I want is for that game to go and then Australia's COVID dramas to continue, and then we hear that the Warriors are stuck there again next year, because that could potentially be the death of the club.
Okay. I'm not sure if it would necessarily get to that stage, but I think the NRL need the Warriors too much. As you see, there's 17 million here from Sky.
No, I don't mean they'd be gone. I think they wouldn't be based in New Zealand anymore. I think they'd move their operations to Australia if they got stuck there even longer.
Okay.
Just because it's easier, potentially. But yeah, that would have such a negative effect on NRL in total. Having no team based in New Zealand, we've already seen it the past 2 years. I've seen in my local circle a bit of a drop of interest from friends and family. With no live games to go to, they're not as interesting. The recent blowouts that seem to be happening every week aren't helping either. But it's when you can't go and watch a local game, it does make it a bit harder. Speaking personally, I miss it terribly. So fingers crossed for August 15th.
And I don't think it'll depend on an action like the Dragons, because I don't think the New Zealand government is giving any special dispensation to this. So it's not going to be dependent on can they behave and they can skip MIQ. No, the borders are open and you're allowed in, or the borders aren't and you have to MIQ, in which case then it
won't happen.
So it's not. I don't think so. It's not really down to what the NRL does. It's down to what the country, how Australia's COVID situation is at the time.
Yeah. So sort yourself out, Australia, please.
Well, yes, it's quite funny that I saw someone saying, "Oh yeah, they should have relocated the British and Irish Lions to Australia. They had full stadiums." It's like, hang on, Australia's in lockdown as well, folks. That wouldn't have helped. Which I guess just shows you how little people are aware of what's happening in other parts of the world. It's Australia. Please get your acts in order. Let's open up again. Let's have our nice trans Tasman and Cook Islands bubble. Don't forget we've got Cook Islands open. So let's hope that reopens.
Definitely. And next bit of news, we have to do a redaction from last week because the bloody Brisbane Broncos lied to us. We reported last week that Kevin Walters came out and said that Matt Lodge and Tavita Pangai Jr. would not be leaving the club. They were there to stay, and we were talking about how Ben Ikin must have had some effect in there and decided that those are players that they want. And then not long after our show, the Warriors announced that Matt Lodge had joined the team effective immediately. I believe it was Thursday or Friday. That the news came out that he was joining the club straight away. It's another one, a bit like Dallin Wadanese-Zesniak, where the Broncos are paying part of his salary, and it's been very divisive, I think it's fair to say, in the club. I'll go into it a bit later because, spoilers, Richard, even though he's not here, he gave me a question that's about Matt Lodge. So I'll touch it more in that part there. But I think he is going to help the Warriors out a lot. He's a very big forward, but I just don't like when it's kind of the cliche with the NRL at the moment where they'll come out and say one thing and then not even 48 hours later, something else happens. So we see it with players saying, I'm not signing anywhere, and then hours later it's announced that they've signed with another club, or coaches coming out. I know you always say it's the when a CEO comes out and says they back the coach, that coach is gone. So Simon said, thank God we're not paying for his legal bills. Thankfully, he hasn't been getting himself in trouble recently, which is good. But I think the Warriors, we were just talking about how the Dragons dealt with their players. I think the Warriors are a bit more strict I don't know if that's the right word to say, but if players get themselves in trouble, the Warriors kind of react very quickly and swiftly. So I think if he did get himself in trouble, they wouldn't take it, and he'd either find himself dropped or a contract ripped up potentially. But yeah, he's had a couple of years where he's kept his nose clean, so I'm sure the optimist in me thinks that's going to continue. And on Tavita Pangai Jr., the rumors have come out that he could be with the Bulldogs by the end of the month. So another player they said isn't going anywhere. Apparently, has already got his foot out the door. So I've been talking about the Bulldogs. They've made a lot of good signings, but they needed help in the forward pack. Tavita Pangai Jr. has off-field dramas, as I think that's an asterisk for many NRL players now. But he is a very good forward, and he could really help that side out. They've got a very good... but it's going to be hard. And I see Simon said it's not good for the club, the family image of the club. That's true. You can take that swing at it, but yeah, I'll cover that more in my question as well, because that's a very good point. But more Broncos news before we move on. Kurt Capewell, he came out and said he hasn't signed with anyone, and then not long after that, he announced that he'd signed with the Broncos on a 3-year deal. Very good signing for the Broncos. They're really starting to build a team for next season, which clearly by how they went last year and this year, they need a lot of changes. And the exit of David Fafita and then releasing Matt Lodge and Tavita Pangai Jr. will open up a lot of money. They've obviously got Adam Reynolds coming in, but Capewell, Tony Staggs, and Brenko Lee are their big names they've signed for next year. Very, very good signings, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else Ben Aitken and co do in the remaining weeks of this season in terms of how they shape next year, because they really don't want to be bottom dwellers for a third year in a row. I think that will be disastrous for them, especially with this new Brisbane team coming in a couple of years. They really want to get themselves back into playoff territory. Otherwise, they might lose a bit of fan base, as unbelievable as that may sound. But more signing news, we've got James Fisher-Harris from the Panthers. He's extended his stay with the club to the end of 2026. I think that's great news for the Panthers. I think Fisher-Harris has been one of, if not the best front rower in the competition this year. Plays very high minutes, always goes 100%, and is always really good at bending defensive lines. And you kind of see with how, admittedly, his halves are no slouches in Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary, but the go forward he provides them to let that electric backline slot into action is it's just too valuable to let him slip. And I'm sure there's 15 other clubs that would have thrown everything they had to get him, but he knows he's onto a good thing with Penrith, and it's shown with such a long deal to sign. So great news for him. State of Origin news. Richie's not here, so I'm going to avoid talking about State of Origin as much as I can, so he doesn't twist the knife. But Newcastle has now officially been announced as the location for State of Origin 3. With the COVID issues in Sydney, they couldn't play it there, so yeah, Newcastle's going to have it. But unusual having two smaller areas get Origin games this year, with Townsville and Newcastle, but I think it's probably better for the atmosphere. Taking it to Newcastle will be a bit more exciting because it's a dead rubber match. Some of the big stars aren't going to be in it, so taking it to Newcastle, you might get a bit more interest, and should be a good night. I'm hoping that Queensland can finish what has been a poor campaign on a high note, but we'll discuss that a bit more next week when Richard's back. More signing news though. Rooster Isaac Louis has signed a 3-year deal with the Gold Coast Titans. Another good signing for the Titans. They're kind of filling their pack up. I think they just need some halves. Potentially Cody Nikorima, as we discussed last week, could be going there. There's been no more updates on that. but they need a half in there if they're going to stack this forward pack up. If they've got no one to do anything behind it, they're still going to struggle. Although the game we're going to talk about soon showed that their struggles may be over. But back onto the Dragons news that we discussed with Paul. They are in discussions with the Warriors to potentially borrow Jermaine Tanoa-Brown. And that's just for the rest of the season due to the hole they've made by firing their front rower. They don't have the depth that they thought. I think it's a good move. Jermaine hasn't been playing a lot for the Warriors due to other props in the team being a bit more consistent than he has in his second year. So it gives him a chance to play some more first grade for another team and learn rather than playing in the reserve grade where it's a step down. And I think that's only going to be better for his personal development and the Warriors in general. Getting as many players as they can out playing top level will only benefit them for what should be a good season next year, although the season is not over yet, hopefully, with all my fingers crossed. And next bit of news, we were talking about the World Cup last week, about a decision being made on if it would go ahead or not. They've pushed back their decision making. There's apparently been a bit of an issue with New Zealand and Australia, with both countries not willing to say they'll come or not. They're still umming and ahhing. The NRL is very concerned about the quarantine. They have a full NRL season, go up to the World Cup, and then be stuck in quarantine when they come home, and then go. Basically, they'd have to go straight from quarantine straight back into training for next year, which doesn't give them a break, which they have in their rugby league agreement, that they have to have a certain amount of weeks off. So they're a bit iffy about that. So the Rugby League Association has decided to push it out a few more days. So we should have a decision by the end of this week, which means we can discuss it a bit more next week. And before we go on to the reviews of round 16, I just want to offer my condolences to Warriors coach Nathan Brown and Eels centre Tom Opacek, who both lost their brothers last weekend. Sad news for both of them. I know Nathan Brown is with his family right now, and be a tough time for both of those guys, and wish them nothing but the best. So let's just get into round 16's games. We started on Thursday with the Storm defeating the Roosters 46-0. 13th win in a row for Melbourne. And they did it in style. I think essentially you can just say they just know how to win without all their talent. They've had talent out all through the year. This game here, where they won 46-0, they had no Harry Grant, no Ryan Pappenhausen, and no Nelson Asofa-Solomona. And they still scored more than 40 points. And that was the 8th time in the past 10 games that they've scored over 40 points. They dominated the first half. They went into the break leading 30-0 and just outplayed the Roosters at every turn. They were just playing smarter football. They even had a passage in that first half where they held onto the ball for 9 minutes straight, which is essentially unheard of in rugby league. And even though the scoring slowed in the second half, they just never let the Roosters back into the contest. The Roosters, well, they're still a playoff team, but this match, I think, showed that against the top sides in the competition, they just don't have the roster to take them on with all the injuries they've had. Simons also mentioned, was it just me or Melbourne be disappointed not scoring 50 on the Roosters? I think they seem to be a team that's just happy to win. They still don't take winning as a given every week. Craig Bellamy's very good at making them know that they have to play each week to get a victory. And if it's by 10 points or by 100, a win's a win for that team. But yeah, a 50 would have been probably a nicer cherry on top for them to end the game. But yeah, the Roosters, I think it's really hard for me to criticize them right now, because the amount of stars that they don't have right now, and playing against a Storm team that are doing this to every team they face. You kind of expect it. I was hoping for some points from the Roosters, but I picked the Storm to win this, and I think the Roosters are gonna struggle when they play these teams. I think everyone around them or below them, they should be reasonably competent in getting the win. But against teams like the Panthers, the Storm, and the Rabbitohs, I think you're going to see them struggle. But yeah, great win for the Storm, sticking with their trend, and odds are they get to enjoy a nice week off this week. But I think next week when they come back, they're probably firm favourites to get their 14th win in a row. Next game on Friday was the Warriors losing to the Dragons 19-18. So it was a frustrating game for me, Paul.
Well, you know what we could do? We could play Richie's post-game review, if you like.
Yeah, sure. He'll let him cry for a little bit because I'm about to start.
Oh, I've just downloaded it. So we'll skip this game and we'll come back to it in a second. Literally give me 2 seconds.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll go to the next Friday game, which was another 1-point winner, with the Panthers defeating the Eels 13-12. I thought the Panthers definitely struggled without Nathan Cleary in this match, but they still had enough class to get the job done. However, an injury to Jerome Luai is not going to help their campaign, effectively losing both their halves. But I thought it was a great matchup between two top sides. And it did make a break from all the one-sided matches we've seen, bar the disappointing Warriors game, which we're going to hit back on soon. The Panthers made more errors than usual, or than I'd expect from them in that first half. And then the Eels kind of copied them in the second half and let them off the hook. There was a forward pass from Clint Gutherson in the final 5 minutes that would have sealed the win for Para. But yeah, they just, I don't know if it's a little bit of lack of confidence when you're facing a team as strong as Penrith that the Eels just couldn't get the job done. But Mitchell Moses, who is going to go play for New South Wales in Origin, he had a mixed bag. He missed some key kicks at goal, including a penalty attempt right on full time that would have won them the game. But he also set up a couple of nice tries from kicks. So bit of a mixed bag for him. I'm sure he'll do his best in State of Origin, and Parramatta really need him to be on song if they want to actually go through and go all the way once they hit playoffs. But I thought Matt Burton for the Panthers, I think he stepped up to the plate with the match-winning field goal, first of his career. They moved him out to centres again and brought Tyrone May into the halves. For this game, I think with Luai and Cleary both out, you're going to see Burton back into the halves. And I think if you're sitting on the sidelines as an optimistic Bulldogs fan, you'll be very happy with what you saw out of him in this game. He kind of has that clutch winning mentality, which we see from so many of the top stars in the NRL. So to see him being able to step up and seal the win when it counted for Penrith could be good things for the Bulldogs when he joins them next year. And should hopefully pull them off the bottom of the ladder. Have you got the video ready, Paul?
I am ready, yes.
Okay, go for it.
Here's Richie.
Off Rugby League show on Wednesday nights, the Warriors have dropped another agonisingly close game in Golden Point extra time to St George Illawarra Dragons, 19-18. The Warriors really did snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in this one, leading 18 points to 6 with 10 minutes remaining. Somehow the Dragons managed to score 3 unconverted tries in the last 10 minutes, with the equalising try coming just seconds before full time. And the Warriors gifted St George many opportunities in Golden Point extra time through handling errors, and Corey Norman, after a poor night with the boot, finally slotted a field goal to put the Warriors out of their misery.
There you go. That's Richie's view of the game. You can either make your comments your own, or you can move straight on if you like.
I'll just add my little 2 cents. He covered a lot of it there. You could see the pain in his eyes, poor guy. It was a horrible game to watch. The Warriors, 18-6 ahead, and then they just imploded in the final 20 minutes. I don't know what happened. Dragons just got in their 3 tries, got them to Golden Point. Corey Norman, he couldn't kick a single goal to save himself during the regular game, but then got the one that counted and keeps the Dragons' playoff hopes alive. They are obviously very happy due to what they did later on. But the Warriors, it was a must-win game, and they just didn't do it. Thankfully, some results went their way later on in the round, which has kept their playoff hopes alive. But they need to just start winning. They've got to play not this week, but next week they play the Panthers. The week after they play the Rabbitohs. And then after that, it gets a little bit easier, but they need to get winning now if they are to have any chance. If they lose this week, you could basically put a line through them for the season. And that's saying it as an optimistic Warriors fan. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But we need to see some results sooner rather than later. So we'll go on to the first game on Saturday. Back to blowouts with Seagulls defeating the Bulldogs 66-0. The Bulldogs just failed to show up. Manly are just at another level, but the Bulldogs offered them no resistance at all. And that's the 3rd week in a row that the Sea Eagles have scored over 50 points, which is unbelievable. And in the last 120 minutes of football, they are 110 for 0, which is just crazy stats. Manly scored 11 tries. Ruben Garrick equaled Manly's record of most points by a player in a match, tied with Ron Rolls and Matthew Ridge, I believe. He got 11 conversions and 2 tries. And Tommy Turbo and Jason Saab both got a hat-trick each. The Storm and the Panthers are still the favourites to take this whole competition out. But I think you can't rule out Manly. I think either of those teams would be nervous going into an elimination-style game against Manly if they're playing like they are now. I think they could beat any team on their day. So, don't rule them out just yet. They've basically become the powerhouse that everyone predicted they'd be last year before Tommy Turbo got injured and they fell off a cliff. The Bulldogs, they were kind of on a hiding to nothing in this match. No one expected them to win. Earlier in the year, they were struggling to score points. They're back into that routine again. They were actually missing 13 players, which doesn't help. But even at full strength, I don't think they would have had a chance in this match. And I think them and their fans are just waiting for the season to be over so they can start afresh with their new players and try to get themselves back into contention again. Manly look dangerous. And that takes us into another blowout. The second game on Saturday, Titans defeating the Raiders 44-6. It wasn't my upset of the round, but it came really close because I did not see this coming. With the Titans actually playing a near 80-minute effort, which they've been lacking all year. David Fafita was sent to the sin bin in the 28th minute, but it didn't slow Gold Coast down. They scored 3 tries while he was off the park, and he's actually been suspended. I didn't cover that in the news. He's been suspended after that and is going to miss Origin, which is a big loss for them and for him. But it keeps the Titans in the playoff hunt. As we look over the ladder very shortly, we're going to see how tight those teams just on the cusp of the 8 are. And it shows how important teams like the Titans, the Warriors, and all that need to be if they want to make it. Because basically one more game and everyone else around you wins, you're in trouble. The Raiders, I see Simon's put that he's very depressed watching that game. The Raiders are a spent force. I just don't know what's happened in Canberra, but it could potentially be time for Ricky Stewart to either call it a day or make some tough calls with the squad that he's got. There's far too much talent in this team to be so low on the table, and they're just not playing good. As basic as that can be, I don't know what's gone wrong, but this team's just taken a nosedive, and something needs to happen. It's not going to happen this year, but they need to do something, whether it's changing the table or the heads of their departments, getting rid of the players, getting rid of the coaching staff. They need to do something because it's broken and it's not working anymore. So very sad for Raiders fans who were kind of expecting their team to be a consistent top 4 threat with all the talent they had. That takes us to another blowout on Saturday. Saturday was very, depending on if you're a winning team fan or a losing team fan, it wasn't a great day. The Knights defeated the Cowboys 38-0. I think going back to the blowouts it's a bit tiresome for me as a fan. I kind of like seeing the tight tussles. It seems to be the Warriors at the moment are the only team that are giving me competition. But that's the ones I don't like, because I don't like being on the edge of my seat, knowing that they potentially might lose the game in the final minutes. But Newcastle, they had Kalen Ponga back for the first time in a while, and they just looked too potent with Ponga, Jaden Brayley, Mitchell Pearce, and Jake Clifford as their spine. They looked a lot better. They had the direction they needed. Their forwards were doing a lot of good work for them, and the Cowboys just didn't offer anything. But yeah, Ponga, great back on his return. He scored 2 tries and set up another 2 for Englishman winger Dominic Young, who had his best game in a Knights jersey since coming over from England. Yet another team that keeps themselves in the playoff hunt. And I don't think you can write them off as long as Ponga's there and keeping healthy. That spine's just too strong. And they're going to trouble a lot of teams around the middle of the pack. I don't think your teams like Manly and Penrith are going to sweat them too much, but all those other teams around the middle of the pack will be very nervous facing Newcastle in the upcoming weeks. Cowboys just continue to struggle, and their year is done. I believe we wrote them off a few weeks back. It's bad news for them, but if they continue to lose, it may be the Warriors to gain. So that's good for me as a selfish Warriors fan. That moves us into the first game on Sunday, which is my upset of the round, with the Broncos defeating the Sharks 26-18. I didn't see this one coming at all. The Broncos have been woeful, and the Sharks, I think, had been really developing the past couple of rounds on the back of some good performances from Sean Johnson. And I thought they would have this in the bag, but Katoni Staggs made his return from injury and had a barnstormer, having more big highlight, powerful runs that we saw from him last year when he was the only shining light for Brisbane. But Paynes was a monster in this game as well. He ran for over 200 meters and set up a try, which you don't see a lot from front rowers. But I think the highlight from Paynes in this game was running 80 meters to knock back a Sharks kick and stop them from getting back into the contest. I think it was he's always been known as quite a mobile, fast prop, but to show that commitment to run back when you've got all these fancy backs that can do that type of thing was probably very great for a great sign for Broncos fans that want to see their team fight, which is what they did here. They got into the fight. It was close. It was 12-all at halftime. Later on in the piece, it was 18-all, and then a couple of tries in the final 20 minutes got them the win they needed. But yeah, just good to see them be competitive. It's been a tough year for Brisbane and their fans alike, and it's not going to change anything for them this year. It should keep them off getting a wooden spoon for the second year in a row. But it's all going to be about what they can do, what the platform they can set the end of this season to build on for next season, because, yeah, they really want to be a playoff team again. And the Sharks, they were in the fight, but they just struggled converting opportunities into points. I think Sean Johnson still had a good performance, which is good as a Warriors fan, seeing what he could bring to the club next year. But these guys losing here, the Sharks losing, has kept all those teams we just talked about in the hunt for the playoffs. If they had won here, they would have put a decent gap between 8 and 9. But this loss has kept everyone right in there. And the Sharks are going to need to get back in the winner's circle if they want to keep their top 8 spot, because a loss to the Warriors and then another loss could see them completely out of contention in the space of a fortnight, which I guess makes it interesting. For fans, seeing how on the switch of a dime the ladder can change. But yeah, the Sharks don't want to see that happen, obviously, so they'll want to have a big performance this week. That brings us to the final game of the round, another close one, but it didn't start out that way, with the Rabbitohs winning over the Tigers 38-22. If I'm honest, I was a bit disappointed with the Rabbitohs' effort. We kind of saw what the top teams could do playing against lesser teams without putting cricket scores on. They were leading 26-0 at halftime, the Rabbitohs, and looked like it was going to be another blowout. But I think they got too comfortable at halftime. I think they thought the game was already over and they could just take a step back. And this let the Tigers show some of that fight I'd been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they scored 3 tries, got themselves back into the contest, and 4 tries in the second half, sorry. Disappointing for Tigers fans that they couldn't get the upset here, but it shows how much work they have to do next season. They showed that when push comes to shove, they can push teams, but I think they need a few more additions to their roster to push them to the next level. They've got Adam Dewey and Dane Laurie there, who are very good players. They just need a few. I'd throw a forward in there. They were looking at Pangai Jr., but it doesn't look like he's going to go. But there's a few forwards around. I know people probably facetiously have been saying Paul Vaughan because he's a free agent, but I think he's going to be avoided by everyone right now due to his off-field dramas. But yeah, another forward or two into that team could really spark them into something special. But the Rabbitohs, they have a pretty easy run home, to be fair. They should cement the third place on the ladder by the time the regular season's over. But if they keep switching off in moments in games like we saw in this one, they're going to struggle when they go up against these top-tier teams. So they need that ever-elusive 80-minute performance. If they can do that, they might be a potential smoky for the grand final. So that's the end of the rounds. Me and Richie picked the same games, so we both got 5 out of 8. We got the Warriors game wrong, the Raiders game wrong, and the Sharks game wrong. So that puts us at 87 out of 124 each. So still very tense. Spoilers ahead. We have a game different this week, so we will have a definitive leader at the end of this weekend's round. And before we go into questions, Paul, you want to bring up the ladder for me? So there we go. Not too much has changed for your top tier teams. Melbourne still number 1, Penrith 2, Rabbitohs and Eels 3rd and 4th. Manly are all the way up at 5th. Roosters are 6th. Dragons, with that win, have kept themselves in the hunt at 7th. Sharks, despite losing, stay in the 8th. But then we get to see the Knights have shot up to 9th after their win. Cowboys are going to continue their slide. They're currently in 10th. Titans, after their win, have gone up to 11th, which has pushed the Warriors down to 12th. If the Warriors had beaten the Dragons, they would be sitting in 9th right now, which shows how much it can switch. Then you got Raiders at 13th, Tigers 14th, Brisbane 15th, and Bulldogs 16th. So as we do every time we put a line in where we think it's do or die. I'm saying now 13th and down are out. If the Warriors lose this week, you can rule them out as well. But right now, they're only 2 points out of the 8, so I'm keeping them in the hunt right now. So yeah, that's the ladder. Not too much changes other than that bottom 7th to 12th is where we really only saw any movement. Do we have any questions from everyone, Paul, before we move on?
I don't have any question, but I did want to bring up Vicky's comment. She says, love the show, informative, thought-provoking, and enjoying having my thoughts challenged, even though I disagree sometimes. So there we go. And one of those things she disagrees with, she says, the Warriors can do it. So there you go, Brad.
She's not gonna like me when we get to the preview.
There we go. So, yes. So what was Richie's question for you?
So Richie's question for me, I've got it word for word here. He says, you're the expert when it comes to the prop position. How do you feel about the Warriors picking up Matt Lodge? So I kind of skipped over a little bit of it earlier on because I knew this question was coming. I'm very happy with it. He has had a lot of dramas off the field, but they are quite a while ago. And he's kept his nose clean, which I think is the golden rule. where we talked at length with the Dragons about how the NRL players do their best to show how stupid they can be. Not going to gloss over it. So the fact that he has made some mistakes, and some pretty big mistakes in his young days, he got punished for them. He got fired from a club. But since he's joined the Broncos, he hasn't put a foot out of touch. And he has been, this year, he had been consistently one of their top performing players. He just wasn't a player that Kevin Walters wanted. From what I've seen in interviews with Matt Lodge, basically when Walters got the job, he told Lodge he didn't have one anymore, which has started the on and off again relationship they've had this year. Because every time Lodge appeared to be 1 foot out the door going to the Warriors, I heard Newcastle was a team as well. Every time he got basically pen to paper, Walters backtracked and said, no, you can't go. So Lodge came out and said it was quite frustrating not knowing if you're wanted or not wanted. But I think what got me over the line with him was he actually said he wanted to come to the Warriors and earn respect and prove his doubters wrong, which I think is a great attitude to come. There's been a lot of people, I think Kevin Campion, former player with the Warriors, came out and said he's not signing for the family-friendly club due to his past, but you got to give players a chance. If you keep punishing them for something that they've done in the past and don't give them the chance to redeem themselves, they're always going to make those mistakes. So I'm all for giving them the chance, but I'll be the first in line to kick him out the door.
How long has he been at the Broncos?
He's been at the Broncos, I think, 3 years.
Okay,
I'm going to test my knowledge now.
And as you say, look, it was pre-Broncos time those things have happened. So you say it's not like he's had half a season where he's managed to keep his nose clean. He's done it for 3 years, which does suggest, as you say, a change in attitude and a learning that has happened from those early days. Now, I have no idea what those early indiscretions were, but
he was in America. He got very drunk and he broke into a family's home and threatened to assault the family. So it's not good. And I don't condone what he did when he was drunk, because that shouldn't be something that pops into your mind to do. As a young person in a foreign country, he was banned, I think, for a year or 2 years from the NRL as punishment for what he did as well, before he got his opportunity with the Broncos. So I think he has done his punishment. And if he takes as I said, if he steps out of line, I'll be the first there to say get rid of him. But you've got to give him a second chance before you write him off.
So as Vicky says, so agrees that chance yes, but kick out when second chance is repeated. So if he shows to be a repeat offender, off he goes. He's been given his second chance, and as I say, so far by the sounds of things, he's doing well with his second chance, which is good to see.
Yeah. And that was it. But I see Simon had a left field question, which
so Simon's coming
are the ones I love.
And he goes, what do you think of the NRL having a team in Honolulu in the future when COVID is not a thing? So heading over to Hawaii.
If the NRL are listening and want to offer me a job to be their little reporter, I will gladly move to Honolulu with their team. I think that's probably something they could look at in the future, but we're still years away from getting a second team in New Zealand. So I think you'll probably more likely see them potentially take one-off games to the States first. Hawaii is probably the best place to go. It's got a very Pacific Island feel to it in my experience of visiting. And
you mean being an island in the middle of the Pacific?
Exactly. And and I think they will my time when I went to the States, the people that I spoke to knew very little of rugby league, as you'd expect. I wore my Warriors jersey everywhere I could there. But when you showed them it, they either thought it was ridiculous and crazy because people were killing each other without wearing football helmets and pads.
Which they are.
But but they also liked. They were intrigued by the incitement of it. It's the same, you would know, with rugby union. They get very intrigued by union as well. It's a foreign sport, but they like the gladiatorial aspect of it. So I think you can try to get league in there. I think league's better than union to teach to an American audience because it's, how to explain it? It's very similar to American football in the stance of you have 5 tackles and then you have to kick, where football they have 4 downs and then they have to kick.
It's a simpler game in the fact that in the fact that you've got you start from the same position or start over and over again in a similar way that NFL does. Look, it's not as obviously it moves quicker and they don't totally reset every play, but you can understand that, look, there's a play, there's a move called by somebody on the pitch, it's very understandable from an American football point of view. Simon says that from a time zone point of view, Honolulu is the same time zone, but just one day out. And that's not true necessarily all year round, because at the moment it is it's nearly 11 p.m. It's obviously nearly 9 p.m. here. It's nearly 11 p.m. in Honolulu. So they're 2 hours out at the moment to New Zealand. You've then got another 3 hours to Australia. So you're looking at 5 hours time difference to the East Coast of Australia, which could be useful if they use that to not clash and have games back to back. But it also could be a problem in that all the Australian games, all the away games for the Honolulu team will be quite late at night. For their home audience. So
they have a similar issue when they go to Perth, though. I know when the Warriors have to go to Perth, it's for their body clock, it's midnight that they kick off, which wasn't good as a fan, having to wait till midnight to watch your team play either. But they're getting better with the Perth one on planning it when they acknowledge that New Zealand has a different time zone. So they either make it an afternoon game if Warriors are involved, or they keep Warriors out entirely and just do it as 2 Australian teams where it's not that bad.
Yep.
But America has a great opportunity for the NRL, but they've got to focus on building it in New Zealand first, I believe. Especially with 2 years away, it's a losing battle every day with Union, but no games for 2 years here has hurt them a lot more, and they really need to invigorate this country first before they start looking at the States.
Yeah, they do have to come back here. I'd say the second team in New Zealand is required, and you're looking at expansion probably to Perth. As you say, there isn't a permanent team there at the moment. There's also there's places to expand into to complete, as it were, their home market before looking at going to Honolulu. As I say, Japan might be a better option as it's more time zone relative centric, and also the rugby union administration in Japan is very amateur, so perhaps not the same competition for to sort of for TV money. But I guess in Honolulu they don't have whilst they do have a college NFL team, there's not a professional NFL team there, so it's a market that they wouldn't be up against many professional teams, which would be good for them from that point of view.
It would make it a bit confusing because the Hawaii college football team's called the Warriors as well, so that would make it a bit confusing, advertising the Warriors playing. But you could trick a few people through the doorway if you're saying the Warriors are playing. Come watch.
Maybe so. A bit like rugby does by calling the Maori All Blacks rather than being the New Zealand Maori, it's the Maori All Blacks to basically try and sell more tickets overseas, as people think they're watching the All Blacks. Cool. Yes, that's our only question from the from there. But Simon does make the point there that there's only one NRL team in AFL territory, whereas the AFL has had much more success in expanding into NRL territory. So it's time for NRL to fight back.
Yeah, I think if you want to compare it, I think the NRL and AFL battle in Australia is the same as the NRL rugby union battle in New Zealand. I think, AFL is the stronger team if you're looking at Australia overall, same as
Yep.
Union is here. You've got areas of New Zealand where league's very strong. But yeah, overall, it's a landslide for Union, and it's a landslide for AFL over there.
Cool. So that's our question section. Do you want me to bring up the games for next week?
Yes, please. So yeah, we've got round 17. I've got
Where
Richard's
all the games
picks
gone,
here.
Brad?
Yeah, well,
24 games.
there's another 8 teams that have decided to have a party as well. They're doing a big party together to celebrate. No, it's the second bye week with Origin coming up. They have their second bye, even though we just had a whole week off. They're doing it again. So yeah, four games here. We've got Thursday night Seagulls versus Raiders. I think it's
before we go into this one. So teams that aren't playing this weekend will have had 2 weekends off. Is that good for them from a rest point of view as part of the season, or is that bad for them because they'll get a bit rusty having not had games, and we'll see some teams coming back a bit rusty next?
I think some of the teams. So I've got the teams here. It's the Knights, Broncos, Panthers, Storm, Dragons, Tigers, Titans, and Eels are all off. I think your teams like the Panthers and the Storm, it's just another day. They'll come back. But I think your Broncos, your Titans, potentially your Eels, Dragons and Tigers, I think those guys might struggle coming back. Dragons, you just don't know what they're going to do when they've got a whole week off. The parties they could throw. But yeah, I think your top tier teams will be fine. But yeah, I think the ones that the Warriors really need to fall off, hopefully, as a Warriors fan, they struggle coming back from it. But yeah, they all get the week off with Origin coming up. But yeah, Thursday night we've got Seagulls Raiders. Richard and I have both picked the Seagulls here. I think we saw how strong they were and how poor the Raiders were, so it's kind of easy to pick that one. Friday night, we've got Rabbitohs Cowboys. We've both picked the Rabbitohs. I think more of the same. Cowboys are struggling, and Rabbitohs, they had a bit of a scare, but I think they'll get the job done. Saturday, we have the Bulldogs and Roosters. We've both gone for the Roosters. I think, yeah, Bulldogs continue to struggle, and the Roosters, they were humbled against the Storm, and I think they're going to be looking to make a statement against the Bulldogs, so they'll get the win here. And then Sunday, the last game of the round, we've got Sharks Warriors. Richard has picked the Warriors, but I have picked the Sharks. I'm very hopeful as a Warriors fan. The Warriors get the job done, but Chad Townsend is out injured after his performance in his first game back as a Warrior, and I have very little faith in Sean O'Sullivan in the halves, and I think the Warriors will struggle. Really interested to see how Matt Lodge goes in his first game for the club, but I think the Sharks are going to have the edge here, and Sean Johnson's had a bit of form playing against the Warriors as of late, so unfortunately I think he will get the job done, so I've gone with the Sharks. So that's our picks. Yeah, all the same bar that last game. So we'll have a definite leader again, and hopefully for the first time this year, the leader is me. So we'll see what happens there. So before we move on and end the show, we'll cover a little bit of overseas rugby league. Greg Inglis has been released from his contract with Warrington after failing to recover from his hamstring injury. There's a bit of cloak and daggers with the release because releasing him's opened up a bit of change, and they've now firmed as the favourites to snatch George Williams, who was let go from the Raiders this year. So I'm still keeping my ear to the ground on when an official announcement on Williams' future is announced, but at the moment it's still all just rumours. Then we had the mixed round where we had 2 rounds back-to-back in close succession. So there was quite a few games postponed or defaulted. So I mentioned last week that Castleford defaulted to St. Helens, so St. Helens got the automatic 24-0 win. They actually ended up getting a game back because Huddersfield for round 13 defaulted because they couldn't field a team. So Castleford got a 24-0 win in their favour. But yeah, round 12, we had that game for St. Helens Castleford. Warrington wiped the floor with Wigan 40-0. Salford and Wakefield was postponed due to COVID. Then we had Catalans defeat Huddersfield 50-12. And then Leeds defeat Lee 48-18. We spoke last week with Simon about how Lee, they're just back in the Super League, but they're on the verge of getting booted out again. And this massive loss did not help them. So that was round 12. It was basically 3 games. Round 13, Wigan lost again 24-6. Hull FC versus Salford was also postponed due to COVID. Then Leeds defeated Warrington 22-16. Catalans and Hull KR was also postponed with COVID. And then, that Huddersfield Castleford game that was defaulted due to Huddersfield not being able to field a team. So not a lot of games for them over there. It must be very interesting. I only get to see bits and pieces due to being in New Zealand, but I think it would be quite frustrating as a fan in England when games just keep dropping like flies. I couldn't imagine going into like the Warriors here. We got 4, or going into the round this round, got 4 games, then you find out 2 of them are cancelled. Be quite frustrating. But round 14, we've got some games penciled in. So we've got Leeds versus Catalans, Wakefield versus St. Helens, Hull FC versus Lee, Hull KR versus Warrington, Wigan versus Huddersfield, and Castleford versus Salford. I'm not sure what Huddersfield's situation is, but Wigan could finally get a win here if they have to default again. So that would be good as a Wigan fan because they have fallen apart, which is very unfortunate for me. But I'm not really sure what's gone wrong there. But I've seen Simon says, I see Sky Sports in the UK is dictating which games are to be televised. They don't want games during the Euros football. That's true too. It's all over the place. Like this round 14, you've got 2 games on Friday and then the rest of the rounds on the Sunday. They've got all of Saturday completely open. Simon might know a bit more than me. I don't follow football, but I am aware there's something happening up there. I keep seeing on Facebook it's coming home, whatever that means as an uneducated league fan. But I think they're dictating a lot. They want to have eyes on their football and on their league, so they don't want them clashing. It's the same. Bringing it back to union, it's the same as you don't generally see the Warriors play home games at the same time the All Blacks are playing, just due to the fact that you're going to lose a lot of all your audience there. So anything else before we sign off, Paul? Anything else in the audience or any feedback from you?
No, I think that's it. I think we're there. So thank you very much, Brad, for keeping on going. I know it's very hard to talk for an hour on your own.
It is.
Tried to do it myself.
We'll have Richard back next week to offer the knowledge that Vicky mentioned earlier. So thank you for sticking with me, and thank you
for more moral support. But there you go.
But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and joining us tonight on the Standoff with Brad and Richie. For your weekly update on rugby league, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Thank you, everyone, and good night.